Now, what happens when a missionary comes in and he's totally different, and there are some people that automatically gravitate to him? All right? The established society doesn't yet, because they still have him kind of on probation. They're waiting to see who this strange guy is and what he's really about. Who is it that accepts him the most easily? The people who never accepted the standards of their own people. Okay? And what he may do, if he's not careful, is he will form a little group of people who were already outcasts from their own culture. And what will happen then is that the rest of the culture will look at that and will say, well, yeah, okay, you see the kind of people that are becoming Christians. They're the kind of people who never were worth anything anyway, never cared about the things they should have cared about. And it makes the church even more seen as a separate, other cultural society. Okay? The opposite approach is to try to understand what the values of the culture are and to satisfy those values. Okay? What are the things that those people care about? Because really anything that is important, Christianity does have an answer to that, right? Anything that is a legitimate human concern, there is an answer for that in the gospel and in the Christian lifestyle. And so to learn a way to approach that, and to where you are talking to the chiefs and the councils and the leaders and the old men, and you're having long conversations as they try to figure out, are you here to overturn everything that is important to them? Or are you going to reinforce the things that are important to them, but maybe in a different way? Now, we're not talking about syncretism, where you just take the gospel in and just kind of throw it into the stew pot and mix it in with everything else that's bad. Or that the gospel can somehow just not have any stigma to where people don't even have to repent. You can just identify with them so well that you find out they're almost Christians already. We're not talking about something like that, but at least satisfying the things that they do know are right. Okay? You don't want people, you do want people to have to repent of sin, the things they know are wrong. You don't want them to have to give up the things they know are right to respond to the gospel. Okay? And we're going to talk about some examples of how that has happened in many times, where the missionary comes, and for a person to join the missionary, he has to leave behind not just what he knows is wrong, but what he knows is right. Yes?
I have a question about what would you do, you mentioned before the story where some African culture, it was unappropriate for the women to wear blouses because that was seen as not good. So the missionary comes in, his wife is wearing a blouse. Obviously it's not right for her to take it off, yet they're seeing her as a negative person. What value or how might that potential stumbling block be resolved?
Well, that's a reasonable question. Chances are they are going to tolerate differences in dress in the missionary anyway. He's going to be so different already. They're not going to categorize something like that. They're not going to categorize it the same way. So he's going to get by. They're going to be able to get by with that. Now, how far a missionary should go in taking on the customs himself has always been controversial. Was it Hudson Taylor, who in China, he saw that they were not identifying with the people at all. They had their compound with the walls and living totally English lifestyle. And he actually colored his skin and wore a braid and wore clothes like the Chinese wore in order to be able to identify them, and had a lot of success from that. His approach was very controversial then, as it would be still. But it was very controversial then. There were people who said that, and it's interesting though, they didn't debate him on biblical grounds so much as just coming from the assumption that English culture, which is where he was from, is the right culture. We need to be teaching them to cut off their pigtails, and get like us, not us become like them. But he was saying, his approach was that the gospel needs to take root. The gospel needs to be planted in every culture, not just another model transplanted in from somewhere else. So, underlined there, it says, the church must make sure the values of a culture are satisfied in the Christian lifestyle offered. All right? Now, there may be some values, some cultures that are so depraved, it may be difficult to do that. There have been things such as human sacrifice, widow burning, things like that, that it's being done to meet some kind of sense of need that they have. You have to get beyond that, find out why they're doing it. Not that you condone it in any way, but try to find out what is it that they think is accomplished by this sacrifice. And then try to show how the gospel meets that need. And so you're not necessarily trying to meet the need of a custom by a similar custom. The replacement custom may be totally different. For example, in one of the books they gave an example of rites of passage. And rites of passage are ceremonies that emphasize the importance of certain events in a person's life. And we all have them. Some cultures have a lot more of them than others. So marriage, graduation, certain birthdays, baptism, many others could be practiced in some cultures. And in most cultures, these are very religious. Now in America and in some European countries, a lot of these ceremonies have become very secular. And so public schools may not allow prayer at their graduation or something like that. But in most cultures, it's not that way. Every religion is wrapped up in everything. Okay, so a missionary goes into a place and he finds out that, okay, when a girl turns 12 years old, they take her down to the witch doctor's house and a bunch of people gather around and they do these chants and they do all these things and celebrating the fact that she is becoming somewhat of an adult at the age of 12. All right? Now, what's he going to do? He could say, hey, this is wrong. Don't go to the witch doctor. Don't. But what if he doesn't replace that ritual with anything? Okay? To them, that point, that birthday, is a very key event. They need instruction on what life is going to be from here on. Those rites serve a need for everybody involved, not just the one person. So the girl, she's being treated differently now. She's being instructed on what life is going to be in the future. Others are seeing her go through this ritual, and so they're going to treat her as an adult now, and so on. So it's meeting that need. What if you just ban the whole thing? Okay? She wakes up on her 12th birthday, and it's just like any other day. Okay? There's a big void. All right? But the church can replace that custom with something. And it doesn't have to be something similar. That we don't have to say, okay, because the witch doctor wears bones and dances around, the pastor's got to wear bones and dance around. No, it doesn't have to be anything like it, but it has to meet the same need. Okay? It can be a Christian custom. It can be held at the church, but the girl is honored for reaching the grand age of 12, and there's Christian instruction, which will probably be very different from the pagan instruction anyway, but a big deal is made out of the fact that she has come to this point in her life. Okay? So the missionaries have to provide a Christian lifestyle that meet those felt needs of the culture. Questions or comments? Yes.
It kind of correlates to what you were saying. Back to like the village, like he made the statement like, what if your wife comes in? Obviously, she's wearing a shirt. But you also said that you can't take away their own culture from them. Otherwise, you should make them conform. But modesty is a big issue in the Bible. So should you just never try what should you do about it? Should you slowly try to make them see why it might be inappropriate, or to them is it so alien that they could never see from your perspective? And to them it would be much more, obviously it's much more modest to wear a shirt. So right. Should you go about trying to change their whole perspective, or?
You would have to lay some foundation. And I wouldn't say that you should never take a cultural element away, because, again, missionaries are agents of cultural change. You are there to make some changes, but you have to make the changes in the right order. If you deal with the symptom instead of the cause, or lopping off the branch and don't know where the root is, then what happens is you're trying to enforce a custom on people that they don't understand and don't agree with, and it might even go against their own conscience. And so then you become a policing agency, and you may have 2 or 3 natives that help you, that make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do and report to you if they're not. And so then some people become secretive, and it develops this whole system because they never really got the idea that you were trying to get across. So you've got to start from the roots and get across a concept of modesty that would include some covering up. And that has happened in most cultures. There would be very few cultures that would still have the views of those villages we were talking about. And Not necessarily because they've become more moral, it could be, if anything, they've become more worldly. They've been more exposed to the outside world, and so they put on a blouse not for modesty, but for decoration. But things still, they do move that direction. But doing it cautiously and not, because we tend to see something as an emergency situation. And I think many of us, if we were in a place where that was the condition, we'd, whoa, we gotta do something about this. I mean, that'd be the thing that would just be at the top of our list to somehow get that changed. Well, it may not be the first thing that needs to happen. It's the heart, and then the mind comes along a little more slowly. And, we often wish that the mind would come along quicker than what it does, but it takes time and explaining.